Welcome to Agile Clips, where we break down Agile into manageable pieces. In this episode, we're delighted to bring you a conversation with Chris Sims, in which we discuss having company leaders use Scrum to drive an Agile transformation. Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We're truly honored.
I'm excited to be here.
We know you are too modest to tell folks that you're a certified trainer, Agile Coach, founder of Agile Learning Labs, and the co-author of 2 best-selling Scrum books. That said, please tell us more about yourself and what topics are top of mind for you right now.
Yeah, boy, thank you for that. I suppose I'd add that I've done a few things in my life, been an auto mechanic, been a professional musician, and I like to say I'm a recovering C++ developer. First started doing the stuff that we now call Agile just a little bit before we had that word, actually. It was probably back in 2000 that I ran across the work of Kent Beck and Ron Jeffries and Ward Cunningham, and pretty much haven't looked back since. So that's me, maybe more than people need to know, but that's me. And, what's on my mind at the moment is guiding company-wide Scrum adoptions or Agile transformations or kind of process improvement initiatives that are related to Agile practices. I'm in the midst of helping a few companies do that right now. And there's some clear patterns that I'm seeing, and I have some strong feelings and some open questions and things I continue to be curious about.
Yeah, it looks like you have experienced some agile transformations that really were not agile or not transformations.
Unfortunately, I've been a participant in Agile transformations that have run the gambit in terms of what I might consider success, from things that were really fantastic to things that were, in my opinion, kind of disappointing. Although one of the stories I sometimes share is that probably the Scrum adoption that I always found to be the most disappointing, at the end of our engagement with that particular client, we sat down and talked with the leaders, and they were just gushing. They were like, "Oh my goodness, things are so much better now." And I remember thinking, I guess it's all about perspective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the perception is 90% reality.
Yeah, but yeah, I've also, like I say, had the honor of being part of some that went really well, and there's some success patterns, and I'd love to talk about those, and I'm sure along the way we're going to talk about some of the anti-patterns too.
Sure. So one of the things, I guess, just to get a segue into that, was you were mentioning earlier that there are some benefits for the organizations when leaders use Scrums themselves. So would you like to shed some light on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's always my first recommendation when I'm working with a leadership team that wants to guide their organization into adopting Scrum is great. The leaders should really start by adopting Scrum. And I find that the reasons I advocate for this are twofold. One is that organizational transformation and change is actually the kind of work that Scrum lends itself to very well. It is complex work, and Scrum is really good for complex work. And it's complex work that requires multiple specialists to do coordinated work in order to create the desired outcome. When we're building software products, right, those specialists are people like, front-end developers, back-end developers, testers, data people, documentation people, things like that. At the organizational level, it's leaders of various departments and human resources and finance and even marketing and sales that need to be involved in order for the organizational change to go well. So on one hand, it's the kind of work that Scrum is well suited to. On the other hand, the other reason that I really advocate for it is that when the leadership team is using Scrum to do their work, they come from a much stronger position when they're asking the people that report up through them to adopt Scrum. Because instead of saying, do what we say, they're saying, well, do what we do. We're doing this. We see that it works. It's better. We want you all to use it as well. And then the other thing that they get is deep empathy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Having the common understanding is a huge plus from Scrum going both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like to say Scrum is very simple, but it's not easy.
Right.
And so if leadership is using it, they'll start to understand that, this stuff is hard, and they'll start to understand what sort of support the people in their organization are going to need in order to be successful.
Yeah, I think what we have seen is that the more visibility the leadership has in the Scrum process itself, the more chances of successful transformation are in that bigger scheme of things. So from that point of view, where do you see leadership working or attending some of the Scrum or Agile training?
So my preference, right? My wish is always that they would come out and start with like a 2-day certified Scrum Master workshop, because I think that that really is an excellent end-to-end, what is Scrum? How do you do it? Why does it work? Kind of an experience. I've had a few leaders do that, but honestly, more commonly, I've found that, leadership teams, executive teams in particular, their time is just so precious that, if we can get a half day to a day of their time, we're doing really well.
Exactly.
And so, we have executive workshops that we've created that are really targeted at, at a bare minimum, what do these people need to know, right? They may not actually need to know all of the nitty-gritty details about things like, how does the team estimate and stuff like that, but they certainly need to know what are the goes-indas and goes-outas, right? Like if you're working with Scrum teams, how do you work with them, right? What are the right things to be requesting of them? Mm-hmm. And what are the right things to be paying attention to and measuring?
Yeah, I think the expectations and the measurements to look out for is really the key that leadership need to understand. But I agree with you that having even half a day and getting to that higher level concept in training for Agile, I think that does pay off quite a bit in creating what we call like a safe environment, and that helps a lot to the teams also.
Although my experience has been that the leadership picks up all the buzzwords like backlog and sprints and don't really have a good feeling for it. So beyond the training, if they're really adopting that approach, I can see why that would make a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, right? You kind of going beyond just a surface level appreciation of it, and getting into that kind of felt sense of, wow, this is what it really is to do it.
So speaking of that, what would be the typical things that go on their backlog?
I love that one. So here's where you're going to find out that you are conversing with an expert consultant. Because, as an expert consultant, it's important that we always have the right answers, right? That's what our clients look to us for. And so here we go. It depends. So, which is, of course, always the right answer when you're a consultant. But
Absolutely.
Here's perhaps a more useful version of it depends. So we start with why are they even going down this path, right? Why do you want to do a Scrum adoption? And we'll help them identify, that there's some value that they're going after. Maybe they're trying to improve time to market. Maybe they're trying to improve quality. Maybe they're trying to improve morale and retention. And then from there, we start to identify, well, what are some, deliverables that they want to work towards, and then take those as stories and start to split them. Also, kind of at a tactical level, assuming that they're like, yeah, we're doing this, we're going to adopt Scrum. We've got decisions to make about, well, are we going to do a pilot first? Do you want to do it all at once kind of thing? Honestly, my recommendation is typically do a pilot, because you're going to learn a lot about what are the impediments to Scrum in your organization by getting a couple of teams up and running and doing it. So then you have to select, well, who are the members of those teams? Who's going to be product owner? Who's going to be Scrum master for those teams?
And it also gives them the idea of what will it take to get it done end to end, so that they have different teams to be engaged, including marketing, all the way to the DevOps and support. So just to see what that means, I agree with you that that's a huge benefit to the leadership.
Yeah, and then the interesting thing is just as with building a product, you kind of discover what the work is by doing the work. As a leadership team starts to do the work, they will discover what the work is, and sometimes the work is this little pedestrian stuff that is so important. So for example, 2 weeks ago, I was on a call with one of the clients we're doing this with right now, and they're, they were bringing in a coach that we work with a lot to work with them, and they want me to, do some work with them as well. And they wanted us to, be on some of the calls with the executive team. It's like, okay, great. But that team uses a, in-house, video meeting system. And, oh, well, we outsiders don't have access to that. And so literally an item that got pushed onto their backlog was they have to find a way to get us access to that, get accounts created and stuff like that. And, that seems like such a small thing, and yet it's such a huge enabler for getting the communication flowing, right? It's basically removing an impediment.
Yep.
And that is, that's the sort of thing that, that ends up on their backlog. They've got the big strategic level things, and then they've got these little tactical things that turn out to be just as important, right? Because otherwise they're blocking progress on the big thing.
Yeah, I think that actually visualizes the limitations of what teams can do and where they need help for assistance or any of the logjam removal type of things from the leadership. But I think that's the visualization of where the problems are and how to get this the flow. I think that's very important for them to realize. So then the next cycle becomes a lot more easier.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Awesome. So one of the key aspects that you had mentioned was that the prioritizing the activities to deliver, and so that we get the most value, and not doing the work of little value. So can you give some thoughts on your thoughts on that prioritization and what kind of? I think we see that all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that is nearly universal is when we go into work with a client, they're always trying to do too much in general, and the problem is everything on their list are all good things, right? There's not one of them that you wouldn't look at and go, oh, that's a really good thing. We should do that. And of course, the trick is all teams have limited capacity, even even that leadership team. And it helps them to understand that the teams underneath them and the portfolio of things that they want those teams to deliver, there is finite capacity. And so prioritization, like ruthless prioritization, is a key to success. And one of the drivers of that is having not only effort estimates on each deliverable, but value estimates. One of the things that we teach our clients, and we teach it in our Certified Scrum Product Owner workshop as well, is business value estimation techniques. One of my favorites is called the business value estimation game, and it is an adaptation of a technique that a good friend of mine and former Agile Learning Labs person, Steve Bachman, invented. His is called the team estimation game. It's fabulous for getting teams to estimate effort, and we teach that too to teams, the development teams. But the business value estimation game takes the same mechanics and applies it to value. And so you gather stakeholders together, and basically they order these deliverables from least valuable to most valuable. And along the way, they're going to have conversations to discover, like, well, what do we consider value to be, right? What is value here? And then once they get an ordering, then we go back and we lay the Fibonacci scale over the top of it. And we say, okay, if this is the least valuable of all, let's call it a 1.
Yep.
And then, where do things start to be twice as valuable and 3 times as valuable and 5 times, et cetera, et cetera. And that really helps because it starts to make the prioritization process much more rational.
It takes the emotion out of it.
Yeah, and on one hand, you can't really take the emotion out, but it helps give the rational mind more leverage. So that when people are seeing the things that aren't going to make the cut, right? Given the capacity that we have, we can only go this far into our backlog, say in the next quarter. And they see the things that are below the line, and the emotion kicks in because they have the sense like, oh my God, but we have to do those things.
Yeah.
And it at least allows us to, engage in kind of more rational conversation about, well, but the things above the line are more valuable than these, right? So if we can't do it all, we should really make sure we do these. And it, again, sounds simple and logical, but boy, once you get human beings involved and our emotions get flowing, it's not easy.
Yeah, I think that's like the analogy that we always use is pushing a watermelon through the garden hose. So you need to see what the size of the pipe is and then make sure that, it's analogous to reducing the batch size and those kind of things. So that the actual things start flowing through the system. But I think that's I think we had talked about certain techniques also similar to that, is like cost of delay and coming up with those. So several ways, but I like the idea of actually, looks like that comes out like a bubble sort. Things starts bubbling up to the top.
Yeah, very much so.
That's great.
So you spoke about emotions, and leaders usually have very strong personalities, type A people, and so on. So I'm wondering if you've noticed behaviors where they really have personal agendas and they're members of a group, but are they really working as a team in the way that with a Scrum team, we want them to act as a unit with a common mission and collaborating and helping each other and so on. So what have you seen at the executive team typically?
Yeah, all of that you just said. So very often these people are, very powerful, very charismatic, and have been really good at pushing their agendas and getting things done. And that's kind of how they rose to the level that they are. And that's super awesome and valuable. And if they're not working towards a common set of goals, you can, a leadership team that is at cross purposes will have an organization that is at cross purposes. One of my favorite resources for this, something that I've used multiple times with leadership teams, is the book 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And it's a fabulous book. It's about an executive team. It's business fiction, meaning it's a story, right? It's like a novel, but it was crafted to kind of share this theory that the author has about, what are these 5 key dysfunctions and how do you go about addressing them? And there's a workbook companion, and I've actually used some of the exercises from that in my kind of coaching work with leadership teams, and I found it super useful.
What was the name of the book, please?
The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Okay, that sounds very interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's actually a really good book. And I've seen all of the dysfunctions.
I think from the coach's point of view, or even the team's point of view, is that how to make those dysfunctions visible in a lot more conducive way, so that they are not offended, or the leadership is not offended.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because like you say, they are human beings. They have egos, just like all of us do.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly, I think one of the things that leads to growth in leadership, meaning like more effective leadership in the organization, is helping those people to do their own like personal development growth, right? And it's really my friend Michael Sahota, who does a lot of coaching work and coaching around organizational transformation. He always likes to say, as a leader, if you want your organization to change, first you must change.
Interesting.
And there's a lot of truth to it.
Yeah. I mean, we also ask, even for the retrospective, we also ask the teams, or if you want to make a suggestion, what will you do to make that change happen? All of a sudden, the dialogue changes. But I like the idea of having leadership. What are they going to change in their life or their approach? Mm-hmm. I think that's an awesome question to be asked.
Well, it's not only that, but Michael also says that when you go into an organization to help them, it's the leadership that owns the transformation. It's not the coach or the consultant. So you're really helping them understand what they need to do in order to help the organization.
Yes. He's I love the place that he comes from when he's coaching a transformation.
Chris, I think 2 months back we had the meetup. I forget the name of the gentleman. He was like, he was also another coach, and he said, when his assignment is done as Agile coach, he goes back 2 months later and find out how are they doing when you are not there.
Yes. That was Llewellyn Falco.
He is an amazing guy.
He is an amazing technical coach, and he works with the technical teams. And at a surface level, organizations bring him in to help the teams improve their technical practices. What he actually does is create a shared focus on improving technical practices to actually help the team come together and become a better team. And they don't even realize that at first that's what's going on. And it's really amazing.
And one of the things he mentioned, as you were saying, he makes sure that they own the process, they own the technique, instead of him telling them to do something.
Yep, he says it's more important what happens when he's not there.
Correct.
Than what happens when he's there.
Yeah.
So given all this discussion about the types of individuals who would be in a leadership team, and especially in the early days, I assume that the retrospectives would be very interesting, with probably a lot of finger pointing. So what have you actually seen when the teams are trying to follow all the ceremonies?
Yeah, retrospectives for an executive team, I see the same patterns that I see on development teams. So one of the patterns I see, it's an anti-pattern, is, we're too busy for that. and of course they think they're special, right? They're like, we understand that it's important for our development teams to hold these retrospectives because, that's how they'll improve and we want them to improve. But, we, the executive team, things are different here. We're really busy here. And so we don't have time for this retrospective thing. And I always kind of laugh because, if you go down and talk to the development teams, what are they going to tell you? They're going to say, oh my goodness, the executives are asking so much from us. And there's, so many deadlines and we're so busy and we don't have time for a retrospective. So that pattern is there. And the other pattern that I see is, the problem is outside of this team. We need these other people to change, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at the executive team, it's like, oh, well, our transformation plan is good, but people just aren't following it.
Yeah.
And, down at the team level, right, they're like, well, our team is good, but, our stakeholders or executives don't understand and they're not supporting us in the way that we need. And, you already called it out earlier in our conversation. The thing that I bring them back to is, well, what can you do to make it better?
Yeah.
Right. And at the executive level, I always have the lever, if you will, of pointing out that if the people in your organization are not behaving in the ways that you think they should be behaving, it's pretty much always because of the system that you, the leaders, have created. Because human beings were remarkable. When we're engaging in dysfunctional behaviors, it's almost always because if you really look very locally for each individual, it's actually a functional behavior for them. Given the system and the environment that they find themselves in, doing that thing is actually functional for them, even though in the grand scheme of things, it's not functional.
Yeah, I think that's what we see always is like there is a local optimization, and the whole thing gets lost in the global optimization. So people get the kind of a metaphor is like, you were running a motorcycle race. Now you have to go with a Blue Angels. So everyone is unison. You cannot just do it your own thing. And that's resonates with them, saying, oh, so we need to work with everybody else, huh? Kind of. But I agree with you that there is always a local optimization that I'm good, you are not.
So I'm very curious at a very tactical level, when you have the leadership using Scrum, who acts as a Scrum Master? Is it you, or do you train someone, maybe a chief of staff, to do it? How does that work?
It depends. So early on, we may be providing that role. We may be having one of the we have like these awesome people. We call them associate coaches. They're people that aren't Agile Learning Labs employees, but we've worked with them a lot over the years, and we think they're awesome. And they would actually go on site and kind of be there with the client pretty much every day. And so sometimes it's somebody like that. But really what we always want to do is say, okay, well, this could help get you started. But what we really want to happen is for you to identify who's the right internal person to be that Scrum Master, and let's support them in stepping into that role, or just support them right out of the gate in being in that role. And my advice is always, who is the best Scrum Master in your organization? That's the person I want to be the Scrum Master for that executive team. And it may well be someone who's multiple levels farther down on the org chart, but they're the best Scrum Master we've got. And this is probably the most important Scrum team that we have. And so, that's who should be our Scrum Master. And one of the things that gets really interesting is it helps the members of that executive team start to really understand, well, what is a Scrum Master, right? Scrum Master is not the boss. It's not the project manager. They don't have any direct authority to tell anybody to do anything, by and large. they're a coach, they're a teacher. And so it's interesting to watch these executive teams as they get the experience of really being held by a skilled facilitator, someone who doesn't have a position in the whatever the argument is or whatever the difficulty is, but someone who's just really skilled at helping those people come together and work effectively. And of course, somebody who is an expert in Scrum that can really help them understand, how can we use this?
The technical term for that person is that they don't have any dog in the fight.
Yeah, I've heard that said.
But no, it is true that they become like an honest broker of that whole system and create a environment or at least go-to person so that people can open up to that person to get the things done. But I like that idea of having a independent within the organization who knows the business and the sides of things. And that's a great idea.
Wow, this was really great. So much to think about. Chris, again, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. If folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
The best way to get in touch with me is through the Agile Learning Labs website, which is, of course, agilelearninglabs.com. And they'll find, our contact page and a bunch of resources, our blog, all sorts of good stuff there.
And I would suggest also the meetup that you organize in the Bay Area in San Mateo. That has been very helpful from my point of view. You get some really great people to talk to the audience. So I like that one too.
Yes, yeah. For people who are in the Bay Area, definitely come out to the Scrum Professional San Mateo meetup. And for the many listeners that I know you have that are all over the world, my advice is go find your local user group or meetup group. There's a lot to be said about finding your community and connecting with others who are doing this and learning about this. And if you don't find that you have a local user group or meetup group, start one.
Exactly.
It's not that hard. It really isn't.
Great. We'll put links in the show notes to the meetup and your books and your website. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Don't forget to send us your feedback on the podcast. We have a survey link in the show notes. So again, thank you, Chris. Really appreciate it. And bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.